Hello and welcome to the Front End Horse live stream. Happy Thursday, everybody. It is so good to be here. And Matt Perry, it is fantastic to be here with you. Thank you so much for coming on. How you doing?
Yeah, great, thanks. I mean, after an introduction like that, how can you not be? I've never seen anyone look so happy.
That is the single, and I mean single, characteristic that gives me the right to have this job. I don't know coding very well. I'm not very good at programming anything. I'm just enthusiastic, and that's really why I'm here. But yeah. You bring the actual coding expertise, and I'm thrilled to have you on. You are the creator of several animation libraries. And we are kind of going to touch on, well, not touch on it, but like dig into your newest one. Do you want to give yourself, or rather give the chat kind of an introduction to you and who you are, if they're not aware?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, as you say, like a serial animation library, right? I mean, I should probably just settle on one. But yeah, I started with Pop Motion maybe 7 years ago. So which is always longer and increasingly so than I sort of like feel like it should be.
Right.
And then I started doing Pose, which was like a declarative animation library, which turned into Frame of Motion essentially, which is what I'm doing now. And then I just spun up Motion One, which is built on the Web Animations API.
Awesome. And you work over at Framer, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Doing basically this, like just making Frame of Motion.
So cool.
Yeah, it's basically like, essentially the dream job because I was doing Pop Motion. Well, I was doing Pose kind of like as a side project on my own.
Nice.
I left my previous job. I wasn't working for 3-4 months or something. So trying to get sponsorships, but instead I got employed to doing this full time, which is really a bit of a blessing, to be honest.
Oh, that's cool. And so they brought you on board when you were doing Pose, and you kind of I would love to touch on Frame of Motion because I have like an idea of it. I've used it a bit, but I don't have like deep understanding, and maybe we'll have to have you back on to give us a full thing there. Yeah, you either is what you said.
So when you write for long enough, and you leave like a trail of API in your wake, and you see someone's done, and it's so far beyond perhaps what you kind of was intending or imagining or knew was even possible. So there's legitimately people out there who know how to use it better than I do.
So you make a really good chisel, but then you look at some sculptures and you're like, how in the hell? Like, is that kind of...
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the same with any creative tool. Like, sometimes you see the things that people do that you way beyond what you sort of was expecting. And that's the most rewarding bit as well. So
yeah, that's so cool. So super quick, I just want to say hi to people in chat. Leah, great to see you. Saw Adrian's here. Ben, great to see you. Elevidente, Phasmo, welcome. Thank you for the follow. Great to have you. Some great people already here. So you were working on Pose, and then Framer scooped you up, and then you started to work on Framer Motion, or do you kind of like took on Framer Motion? That was already a thing at Framer.
No, we started it from scratch. There was a few of us that were working on. There's a guy called Niels who works there as well. Basically, me and him, I think at the time was building the API from scratch, but like inspired by Pose, but also built towards the product specifications of what the Framer community wanted. Which at the time, like this isn't so much true now, but at the time it had quite a code. Like there was a lot of code involved. Not sure at all now. Before I get in trouble at work, you can use it completely no code, and you can do more with it than you ever could back then. But at the time, we needed like a simple API, and that Pose approach. We even went like more simple than Pose, and yet with the ability to do a lot more. I'd never given credit for this to his face, but it was actually like the boss. Essentially, Jorn, who probably made the nicest bit of the API in-frame motion, which is the animate prop, and the way
Oh,
that it can just take, like a opacity zero directly in the prop.
right.
And because what we'd come up with, like, or what I'd go, because I was pushing for very much a pose. Pose was a bit like style components where you had to
Yeah.
pre-make the component and then you could use it.
Got it.
Whereas this, you just pass the prop straight in, and whenever the values changed, it animated. And that was all down to like the essentially the product requirements. So designing for someone, not yourself,
Right.
led to a much better product and a much simpler product.
That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely see what you mean there, where you can get around some certain, like, not I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say, but like things can be a little uncomfortable or a bit like, it's fine. I'm happy to do that up front. But when you have other requirements, kind of pushes you outside of your comfort zone, or at least outside of what you think you can currently do, and kind of makes you make a better product overall.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also things like you have certain preconceptions around performance.
Hmm.
Like, I don't like looking back, I don't know why. Like, I really didn't want to do it. And when it needed to be simpler, I thought, well, I guess we could do this.
Got it.
And it actually turned out to be fine. There's no, absolutely no. And so some of the stuff we do now is like, it's so much beyond that. And I wouldn't have, a lot of the stuff, like the layout animations specifically, it requires quite a lot of like processor overhead, I guess, to do all
Okay.
the scale correction, and all the transform undos or whatever. So yeah, and it's sort of almost the sort of thing I wouldn't have had the imagination to even do
Hmm.
without a product requirement, because in my head it would be like impossible, or too, wouldn't be performant enough. But
Got it.
actually, when you get there, those things turn out not to be true. It was only your own imagination that
Yeah.
was stopping you from doing it in the first place, which is
Awesome.
the opposite of what an imagination's for.
Your imagination was the limiting factor, not the.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah. So honestly, Framer Motion, people absolutely love it. It's been around for how many years now?
3, I
Three.
guess.
Okay.
Yeah, or coming
Sorry
up
to
3, coming up 3.
ask specific hard hitting questions here. But yeah, people absolutely love it. Like Josh Como was on Tuesday, and that's one of his like go to libraries. He's a big fan. Um, but you have a new animation library while still having framer motion. Like it's not like you killed that one off and this is the new one, right? Like this is a second one. I think we should probably get into it. Talk about what motion one is, and also like why isn't this just part of framer motion?
Yeah, so I wonder how to start. So this is essentially the nicest way to use WAAPI, in my
Okay.
opinion, for certain quite good reasons. The WAAPI, and for those who don't know, that's the that stands for Web Animations API, and it's essentially an animation browser that comes in with every browser, but to varying degrees. So it's only supported like to certain extents depending on which browser you're running. So
Interesting.
and that's that's just the same with any web API. It's just it's I guess it's to the point where I would never use it as a developer because there's so many things to still overcome. And Motion One was, as I was digging into WAPI, it was actually because of Josh that I started writing this in the first place.
Oh, that's
The only
cool.
reason I wanted a side project, and he announced his course, and I thought, oh yeah, course sounds quite fun. Maybe I'll do one about animations.
Oh,
And
nice.
but I didn't want to do one on frame of motion just because it was my day job, and I kind of didn't want to, it's my spare time, and I didn't
Yeah,
know if
it
perhaps
starts to
there were also
blur.
like moral issues about, like, because I wanted to pay a paid product,
Hmm.
and like you're charging essentially for knowledge that should you not be just doing this as part of your job, sort of thing. And because I wanted to learn things, and I knew I didn't really know much about WAPI. I'd done a few
Cool.
experiments, like sort of testing its capabilities. Uh, But it turned out, rather than writing a book about it, like every time I hit one of these rough edges, I thought, man, I could just like, here's a function that figures that out,
It's a
or
nice
here's
way to
something.
abstract it because it's
Exactly, yeah.
it's not super user friendly. It's kind of my understanding. So I am a person that like I've heard of it. Kind of understand that like it's just a really performant way to do animations. That's kind of the end of my knowledge about it. I'm sure chat has varying degrees of understanding of WAAPI, but my what I've heard from people is that it is not a joy to work with compared to a Framer Motion or a GSAP or something.
Totally, yeah. And I guess so. This is almost like this intersection of like capability, ease of use, and there's some things that it will basically never do.
Okay.
And part of this experiment was trying to get away. So I just noticed the WAAPI song jokes in the chat.
What's
Great song. I agree.
is that a
I think that
song? I
I
don't know the
think
song.
WAP.
Uh thank
Um,
you, chat. Thank you, Matt.
and
Nice.
so yeah. So basically, well, I forgot where I was. So,
How did that distract you,
oh yeah,
Matt?
I couldn't tell you. So yeah, so there were certain things that it can't do, but I wanted to make it do, but within like certain file size restrictions. So you want to keep as many of the
Right.
benefits as it could offer with, but also give it as many new capabilities that don't already exist, and then package that in a way that's sort of easy for everyone to use. So Springs is a great example of that. It
Yeah.
doesn't have timeline plotting or sequencing. Well, it has some quite basic stuff. It doesn't have like long. You can't do long sequences of multi-element animations the same way like GSAP can.
Right.
So I wanted to bring things like that in, and another one that's always probably the one of the first things that I wanted to do for pop motion was the ability to independently animate transforms. So that currently you can't do X. For instance, if you wanted to do X and Y translations and
Right.
animate them in different ways, which is
Uh,
especially important. So actually, you've ended up on a page where this is called the glide animation,
right.
and I've forgotten if I didn't add into this demo like drag to. Yeah, so you see the animation
Yeah.
where when you click it, it sort of has this like glide out. The intention with this, and I should really flesh out this demo, is that say this was a carousel and you threw it, the animation would take on the velocity of the gesture and like
Has like
gradually.
inertia and weight and things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
That's this. But if you wanted to do that with just a certain velocity on X and then have something separate happen to scale or Y or something like that, it's impossible in CSS. That's before you even get into the problems of velocity-based animations. But just talking about doing those things separately, it's basically impossible. So bringing that to WAAPI essentially was part of this project as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So chat, Thomas, thank you so much as always. Also, Anthony, Life, Thomas, so many good people just dropped into chat. So good to see all of you. Clearly, Sid, thank you for coming through. Failstorm, good to see you. Or rather, I should say, welcome. I think it's your first time here. But yes, the I wonder command. So exclamation mark wonder. What is motion one? If you send something like that that starts with exclamation mark wonder or exclamation mark I wonder, over here on the wonder page, it'll save it there. So chat, as we're working through, as we're going, if you're wondering something but we can't really touch on it right now, or like it would derail the demo that we're doing, drop it there, or rather, sorry, drop all your questions that way with exclamation mark wonder. If we can grab it right now, we will. If it's got to wait till the end, we'll grab it later. But that way, we don't miss any of your questions, and maybe at the end we'll go through like 5 or 10 of the questions just to cover everything that you are wondering. So thank you so much. And Anthony starts off with a banger. I wonder how many people make Matthew Perry jokes to Matt. Yeah, so there.
Do you know what? Fewer than you'd expect. but more than you'd prefer, I think. Is
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not being an adult during like the Friends peak era is probably helpful, right?
yeah, but I mean, it was obviously growing up. It was obviously still
Yeah,
such a massive,
it might be worse.
massive
Yeah,
thing. Yeah, I wonder if it's even bigger now than it even was then, because it's like
maybe.
everyone watches
Yeah,
it, and rightly
he's not
so.
bigger. Like the actor's definitely not, but yeah,
No, that's true, and it
yeah.
is my intention to when you go into Google,
No,
like
that can't
one
be.
day,
You
one day,
you
you
can't
just don't
measure
know.
yourself against. I hope you don't
You've
look
got to
back
aim
on your life
higher.
and say, "Honey, I was a failure. I never achieved the thing I wanted to do." That can't be the goal. So
Yeah,
maybe as a stretch. I love that your imagination
it's
held
a
you
stretch
back on
goal.
Framer One, but your imagination is saying, "Yeah, I can top that guy from Friends. I can top him."
Yeah. Oh no, I was talking about Friends. Friends itself.
Oh, Friends the show.
No,
Oh,
no,
easily,
no.
easily.
Yeah.
um, awesome. So, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. So, do we want to now that we've kind of touched on what motion one is? It is to my understanding, and always correct me if I'm talking out my butt. It is kind of it's a library that sits as an abstraction over the Web Animations API and adds a few features that we wouldn't get if we were just using the Web Animations API itself without Motion One. And the Web Animations API is something that browsers have in them natively, and it's a very fast, very performant way to do certain types of animations, but not all types of animations.
Yeah, totally. And just to touch on the performance aspect, just quickly, that I do think that JavaScript animation libraries can be, and yeah, GreenSock has like a demo that sort of shows that it's faster than the Web Animations API if you chuck 3,000 elements at both.
Got it. Oh,
But I'm not.
the Starfield demo is that?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it is true. But so basically, if you're going to do a Starfield, definitely go with GreenSock. Or I think GreenSock is actually like the it can handle the most elements. But there is also another side to performance, which is like hitches. So when you've got the main thread busy doing other UI work, any JavaScript animation library will sort of like stutter. Whereas with certain animations in Web Animations API and CSS, you can run these animations entirely like on the compositor thread, which is like a completely separate process. So if JavaScript's busy doing something, it won't your animations will stay smooth, your UIs will stay smooth,
Interesting.
and it doesn't matter how many elements you sort of chuck at that. If the main thread is blocked, it is blocked, and the animations will stop. Yeah, so there is actually on the motion.dev, there's a performance guide on the left there, and even if you're not using Motion One, I do think it's worth the read, because I've tried to go through like what elements
Nice.
you can or should animate, and why things are why things are more performant than others, or you might have heard that you can't animate heights, and why sometimes that isn't actually true, and it's safe to do it, but there's just a bunch of stuff in there. So I would
That's wonderful.
recommend at least reading that if you're interested in
Awesome.
web animations. Yeah.
And before we get into kind of starting our first Motion One animation, I do need to touch on something that we announced in the tweet you told me about, but I didn't put it down below. But I definitely want people to kind of like hang around for and be excited about. We're getting a live release of a new Framer Motion, not Motion One, but a new Framer Motion feature today. Is that correct? Am I saying that?
That's right. No. So yeah, it's true, and we'll go through that because it's something that I've wanted for a long time as well.
Awesome.
So it's quite an exciting feature. Yeah.
We're doing it live on air, chat. We're getting an exclusive chat. It's awesome. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. We'll do that closer to the end, I think, so that we're not like Motion One, Framer Motion One, like try to separate them out as much as possible, and then like we'll make that distinction here. But today we're talking mostly vast majority about Motion One. Like I said, maybe Framer Motion in a following stream if we don't scare Matt away too hard. So yeah, cool. Yeah.
Cool.
So, where do we want to? Are you axing away animated shared layout from framer motion? I don't think
I,
that's the. Oh yeah.
it isn't, but that is already axed. So you
Oh,
can make shared element animations without any wrapping element. You just have to give the elements layout ID, add a new one with the same layout ID, and it will animate out from the old element.
oh, cool. So it's there's a bit of an improvement where you kind of deprecated that animated shared layout from the new framer motion. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Nice. Awesome. There you go. Well, Mr. Release then. Clearly, Sid, I'm glad you're here.
brilliant.
You know your
Asking the
framer
right
motion,
questions.
and you're getting good stuff out of it already. So it's awesome. Um, great. So yeah, do we want to kind of start up a new code sandbox? And
Yeah, I can send you a little
awesome. Demo to
link.
start from.
If,
Cool. Yep. I'll open that up.
oh yeah, actually, I really helpfully. That's I didn't think about the dependencies. So if you kill the motion import there
This one.
and just change. Oh, unless on the drop down menu you can click on that and perhaps see what the latest version is.
Up
Oh yeah,
10.4.
yeah. We actually so motion starts from 10, and everything below that is actually a different library that I took over the name from the previous
How did you
owner.
get that? Did you
I
just
just asked.
the person or NPM?
The both, so you can if there's
Yeah.
something that doesn't look like it's being used at all, you can ask them. They'll
Oh,
get in touch with
that's
the owner, and quite
awesome.
graciously they let me use the name, which is great.
Okay. Did you want me to go to 10.4? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, 10.4
Okay,
is
cool.
great. Yeah,
Cool. That's so cool. Awesome. So, what do we want to do here? I see we've got a rounded square so far.
yeah. So well, we can. Okay, so let's start with let's have a look at. So this is how we'll use WAAPI for our first
Okay, cool.
run at this. So this element has an ID on it called box.
Okay.
So if you just make like, oh, actually you don't. Oh yeah, you do for WAPI. Okay, so document get element by ID box, and yeah, we don't even need to save that sort of thing. So if you oh with the yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. You got it.
Oh, if I can type. Yesterday I had a real bad time typing, so we'll see if that carries over today.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
always when someone's watching. Like if I'm pairing with someone or someone's
I've
watching me, I'm like
Yeah, but
very careful to
I've
make
been
sure
doing this
that
since
the
February. There's no excuse. I've been streaming for way too long. So chats just watching me deteriorate. I was better before. So what's going on?
right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So if you do dot animate and then open that as a function, and then so in here you can do something like make an object and do opacity colon 0.
Do I have something wrong here? Cannot read properties of
Maybe
null.
it didn't. Maybe it didn't find the element. So it's because it's saying cannot read properties of null.
Is
So
not yeah. Oh,
class.
it's a
I made it
class.
a class. Yeah.
No
So
worries. I'll make it an ID too.
it will. Oh yeah, brilliant.
All right, cool. So we're getting that. Do I need to hit save? I don't know.
Oh, do you know what it is? This I think this is called parcel or something. But if you reload the sandbox, that's weird. Let me have a little hack around as well.
No worries. Life's just banned. So they can ban words and you can't see it on your screen. Yeah, it's only a word that I can't say now. Y'all are
What's that?
brutal, but you keep it entertaining. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm thinking the typing issues might be the cold because as it gets colder, fingers start to freeze up. Chat. That's what I'm gonna blame.
We're not getting any younger. Sometimes these things happen.
And Aaron points out, yeah, as the viewers go up, it's getting worse. When there are only 9 of us here, it was, my typing was oh my gosh, I was When I was first starting out, chat, I was incredible. Uh,
That's a story you're going to tell him in
yeah,
50
but then
years time.
I blew out my knee, and I would have went pro, but
um, yeah, so I don't. Oh, here we go. Oh, this is kind of weird, but so I actually just.
yeah.
Oh, I know what's going on. Oh, yeah, this is actually what I want to show you.
Okay.
So if you for the second, just if you humor me for a second, wrap
Absolutely.
the whole call in set timeout and make it like a second duration.
Okay. So set timeout. If I can type, I'm gonna be like so self-conscious about typing now, but not actually. I don't really get self-conscious too easily. That's
The gift.
maybe a character flaw more, but yeah, cool. So we've got a second.
Yeah, and
Set
maybe if you
timeout.
give so in animate takes like a second argument where you can pass it like all sorts of options. So
Okay.
if you go and like give it like a duration of a second or maybe 2 seconds,
So like that.
it's actually in milliseconds in WAAPI.
Okay, but like these two objects is there we go. We saw it. Oh, it bounced right back. That's what it was. The duration. If we do
That's
it,
it. It was happening literally too quick for us to see the
yeah.
animation.
It was happening instantly. At least I think so. Yeah. So now I put a 10-second duration on, which might okay. Chad, I'll admit 10 was maybe a little too long,
We can probably feel that.
but you definitely know it's happening. It's
Yeah,
absolutely happening. And then
definitely.
once it ends, it doesn't stay. Got it.
That's it. So to me, that is not an intuitive behavior because we're telling it to animate to zero, and in my
Yeah.
head, I'm saying like animate to zero and like don't do anything weird.
Right. Right.
You know. So what's actually happening is that the animation technically the animation's getting applied on top as like a separate additive process, and then when the duration finishes the animation's removed.
Got it.
So you're basically saying be your normal self again.
Right.
So there is like a prop that you can give it called fill forwards. So if you give
On the end,
yeah,
in the
comma
second
fill
object.
colon forwards, yeah.
And yeah, I think chat's also onto something. I got really comfortable with Copilot for a while, and I think I am now a crap developer without it helping me like finish all my sentences and all my functions and everything.
Have you found yourself in the midst of an existential crisis yet?
Probably sometime over the next 2 hours. Probably, yeah, yeah. I think for sure we will get there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So basically, as
Cool.
you can see now, but what that's doing is that's basically saying, okay, when this animation finishes, just keep it around literally forever.
Got it.
So and then if you if you try and change the dot style of this element, so which you could do in the inspector even,
Yeah. Okay.
or
Cool.
because just because that's yeah. Yeah, so the box. So if you do like a opacity 0.5.
All right. Give me one sec, chat. Making this bigger for you. All right. So yeah, it doesn't come back.
Yeah, so it's like it's a pretty permanent addition. I'm not sure if important might do the trick, but you know the point is like this is like a
But yeah, I
you
can't
either
even see it. Like
you either get
debugging
it
this
one way or
seems like
the
a
other.
pain.
Yeah,
Like
it's actually it's more from I mean debugging is like one thing, but it's also like going forward in code. Like you've told it to animate to zero, and then if you later come along and do style equals style dot opacity equals zero point
right.
0.5, you kind of expect that to be the next thing that you tell it to do. Then you go through this like linear sequence of you know programming. So if so now if we go back to the JS, we can probably close the inspector actually. We don't need that now.
Cool.
And yeah, just replace this whole just control, what is it, Command A, and replace it with import animate from motion. And the animate is in squiggly brackets.
Cool.
And then do animate open So this is actually not a dissimilar API, except the animate and element is switched around. So you can actually just give it a selector though. So if you do, yeah, dot box, and then so in this way we can animate multiple elements at a time, whereas previously
Cool.
you have to get every node and animate them separately.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's why we had to do get element by ID, or if we were doing if we were selecting an array, we would have had to like map through those or for each through those and animate each one as we go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Yeah, so the next argument is almost identical again to WAAPI. So squiggly things, opacity colon 0, and then
Cool.
duration. If you want to do duration 5 seconds, this time it's in actual seconds. So if you do
Oh,
just
okay.
five,
Okay,
um,
cool. That's good to know. Nice. Okay,
yeah, and so this time,
and it defaults to fill forward.
yeah, it did, well, so what it doesn't do is fill forwards, because the problem with fill forwards, as we saw, was like now if you come along and like try and change the styles, they're kind of overridden by the
Okay.
persistent animation. What we do now, yeah, if you take a look at the div, when we finished, we applied the
Ah.
style.
See, that's what I was like, oh no, if this is how this works, this is going to be a pain in the butt when I need to go and debug something and my box looks just blank, but it's not there. What the heck's going on? I love that you do that because yeah, make it so is there somewhere, and we don't have to get into it, but I'm sure because DevTools is so much deeper and richer than I ever use. I use like 1% of the DevTools, and it's just, is there
Exactly,
somewhere
yeah.
in there where you can like where I could have seen the opacity and the animation on the WAAPI one, or is that not there at all?
Yeah, there is an animations tab that you can go into,
Oh right,
and I'm hoping it will be compatible. Like I never really go in, but I'd like to think essentially because we're using WAPI.
cool.
But well, I we'll probably get into, but not all animations would appear on that. Well, we can get into it now actually. So if you yeah, if you open up the animations, then let's see.
Is it one of
Oh, so you
these?
see the double chevron.
Is it one of
Oh, maybe it doesn't
these?
appear. Oh
Some of them
well,
like tucked away though. Like that's the thing. I've been on streams where I'm like, I don't know where that is, and someone's like, hit Command J, and I'm like, what? Or like some kind of key combination, and a little like thing pops up. Chat knows so much more about DevTools, especially Killian Valkov, who's in chat pretty often. Definitely knows way more. Command Shift P, and Life knows so much. There it is. So animation. Yeah, like
ah, boom! Look at that.
when they said that for the first time, I'm like, this exists. This has been here the whole
Yeah, I
time.
didn't know this existed. Yeah.
Well, there we go. There we go. So yeah, waiting for animation. So should we just run this again? Thank you, Life,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
letting us know about that. Oh, there it is. Okay, stuff happened. I like full disclosure. I never used this, so I probably don't even know what we're looking at.
no, same. I actually tried to use it once.
This
And
might be only looking
oh, this is
at.
us.
Yeah, yeah, that is us. Interesting.
So if you, I guess if you make the window, oh, it's there. Okay. Yeah, I would have thought that you'd just be able to scrub through it.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
Hmm.
Interesting, but there's something
That, I mean, to be in fairness to the animations tab, that could be because we've done this thing where we've just then applied the style, perhaps, or I don't know what
interesting. It might be,
what's
yeah.
that.
And Matt, I appreciate you being fair to the animations tab. I don't allow guests to come on and be rude to the animations tab. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just feel like, yeah, we forgot it. We didn't even know it existed.
Right, right.
So I
No.
really feel like we should give it something there.
Oh, Thomas uses it daily. Thomas, I would love to learn more about it and see like what's useful about it because yeah, that definitely sounds like something that I mean, if you're using it daily, I'm sure it might be useful for Matt in some way, right? That's awesome. And Lee says, I like that it also works nicely as an ES module import animate from Skypack. Awesome. That's great. That's
Yeah,
super helpful.
I'm trying to like leverage ASM a bit more as well, like have separate endpoints so that if you are using one of this, you don't need a bundler to
Cool.
tree shake some of the unused functions. You could just do like motion forward slash animate.
That's
But I haven't
awesome.
got around to that yet.
That's great. And just so chat, I mean, I think chat can see what Lee is saying, but just like that would work That's not going to work here, but it'll work on like CodePen and stuff.
And it's somewhere, yeah,
Yeah,
somewhere
somewhere.
that works.
Wherever that works, it works. Awesome. So this is a nice, tidy little API. Yeah, that's great, and especially a big improvement. So first off, just in fairness, we should remove the set timeout. I don't think the set timeout was necessary. I think we
Yeah,
needed
it
the
could be.
duration in the forward, so we shouldn't compare like that apple to we shouldn't compare apples to apples in that sense. But this is a really nice, easy to remember API for that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, so there's a couple more things I can show you,
Yeah,
like in terms of the contrast or the sort of
yeah,
yeah, things that we tried to add, like to make this what do you call it, quality of life improvements,
nice,
I guess. So if you comment these two out again and uncomment your first one.
cool.
Okay, so now if you just copy paste those two lines and like repeat them essentially, and this time, is fill forwards necessary for this? I don't know, but anyway, oh no, maybe take fill forwards off just so we can see. You
Off
know,
of the
we
off of
know that it's
both.
gonna, yeah, we know that
Cool.
it's gonna come pop off at the end. So
Cool.
um, if you change on the second call opacity to 1 and make the duration just a second, and maybe wrap this whole from line 4, maybe this whole call in a set timeout, so that we start it like midway, so like 2,500 milliseconds in the through the animation.
So two like that.
Yeah,
Cool. Okay, so it's going to kick off halfway. Oh, interesting. Wait, let me run that again. So it's fading out. Oh, and it comes back in. Snap. Oh, weird. Okay, so let me try to figure out what's going on here. It seems like this one takes over for a second, finishes, and then that lets this one finish.
yeah,
Yeah, that's not great.
yeah. That's exactly what's happening. So what you yeah, so essentially what is happening is, if you think about before when I said
Yeah.
you apply the animation on top of the styles, well, this is adding another animation on top of that, and it sort of overrides it, but only for as long as it's present. So if you were to add fill forward to the second animation, I believe it would stay on that one forever. But you can kind of see how these things,
Yeah.
I don't know. They you can imagine them being kind of, especially like a big code base, and oh, why is this thing
Right.
being applied to?
Is it forwards?
Yeah,
There we go. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Not a way that I'm gonna want to code out a complex animation for sure. I can immediately see this start to kind of get complicated. Just in the like, I mean, I'm coming from being familiar with GreenSock, so having to get each and every individual thing compared to just doing what I'm used to of like, hey, if it's got box on it, do this to it. And if it's just a single thing, I still want you to do just those quality of life improvements. Speed up development so much, and so yeah, having to worry about kind of like one animation hijacking another animation and then handing the keys back to that animation once it's done. That yeah, definitely see issues happening there.
yeah, totally. And so the default behavior in Motion One is that if you call animate a second time, for any properties that it's so actually what we do is so with these first two calls, if you were to specify multiple properties like background color, transform, whatever it is, you those that is like a whole animation animating multiple properties. But in Motion One, what we do is split them up all into individual animations, so that if any of those values come along later on, we'll stop the existing animation and resume from there with the new animation. So this same kind of pattern here, if you were to like set a timeout on our Motion One code and start animating opacity to 1, we'd stop the existing animation and just carry on back to 1 using our new animation, and the other one's completely gone and it isn't going to like jump back in to take over at any point, which is kind of how I personally, this is how I expect it to run.
Right. And so you're saying basically that the animations can be interrupted, and like if an animation's going, but then I hit like the cancel button, it'll not snap right back, but it'll like go in the opposite direction, or no,
Yeah,
I guess that.
exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
you'd have to currently you would have to if you wanted it to sort of like
Tween back, yeah.
yeah, you'd need to like make your own duration basically, like how
Right.
long was left on the previous time, blah blah blah.
Right.
So you can do that as well, but we don't do that automatically because we don't know. I think the only way you could do it is to know that they've just been animating from a certain target, and if the next animation is back to that target, then you could do something clever with the duration, but
Got it.
we don't do that.
Awesome. Yeah, great. So I definitely see how this starts to get tricky. What do we want to hit next in terms of like getting into motion one?
Well, we could do so if you remove the first. That's probably the last we'll need of WAAPI, I think.
Cool.
And then if you uncomment our motion one code here, and so now you could maybe get rid of opacity one as well,
Get rid of
and
this.
change it. Yeah, change it to Y, and Y is 200.
Cool.
So now this is like this isn't a property that we get access to with
With WAPI?
WAPI, CSS, or anything like that. So that's why, because when we define transforms using CSS, we have to do like the whole transform string. We have to
Right.
get things in the same order, and this could be like super powerful because you can do like transform scale 2 to translate x 100. So those are two completely different transforms that a lot of animation libraries have trouble tweeting between. But you can still do that with motion one because it's using WAPI. But in addition, we have this sort of shorthand where you can do X, Y. You run a completely separate animation. So if you do a new animation call, a second one, and change that to like scale 2.
So I can get it before. Oh, it reacted
Yeah,
too
scale
quickly.
200.
Yeah, it
So
already got in there. Nice.
yeah, and so you can like set that. That could trigger a different time or whatever it is. You could stop it on its own, and it wouldn't affect the Y animation. So there's all these things that you just can't do basically with the browser as it normally is. And the way we actually pull that off is if you right click. Are you on Chrome? Yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so if you right click on the box and inspect it.
Don't know why it overlaps that window. It doesn't like resize. That's interesting. Okay, so what am I looking at? Closing out the animations
Oh yeah,
tab.
okay, so and then so you've got
Got
this
it.
trans. Yeah, there you go.
CSS custom properties.
Yeah, exactly. And so all we do is we figure out. Sorry to mention to the chat. It is using transform, but what it's doing is it's keeping track of the values that we've animated, creating CSS variables for those, and then animating those. And so you can see here we've got this transform string where we insert the CSS variables that we've defined, and this is actually using the one of the CSS Houdini APIs.
Okay.
Which is this one in particular is called CSS properties and values, I think. And what it allows you to do is register a new CSS variable, and you can give it like properties like, okay, this CSS variable is going to be length. So now, like anytime so if you try and like set it to not a length, it won't be happy. So you start getting type checking. But what you also get is the ability to animate these values using CSS and WAPI. Now in Safari and maybe Firefox, we don't have this API yet. So one approach that I was considering was to just end these animations like immediately. So detect that we're doing something that's not supported and instantly set things. So that's why it's like a progressive enhancement. But I felt like this is one of those things that you do a lot. Right. That a lot of people want to use this. So in those browsers, we have like a very minimal numbers only polyfill for WAAPI.
Got it.
And it bumps the overall
Bundle.
bundle size from like 1.7k, which is like that I would have been very happy if it was 1.7k, but it does bump it to something like 3.1. So it's almost, I mean, it's not a doubling, but it's close to a doubling of the bundle size. But we're still talking about such a small library that I felt like this was like one of those moments where it's trying to find that balance between the file size, leveraging what's already in the browser, but extending the capabilities enough for not too much extra thing.
Right.
And what we get by having this sort of numbers only polyfill in there is, for instance, we could do, at the moment, we don't have, WAAPI doesn't support iteration callbacks. So if you run an animation on repeat,
Got it.
it doesn't fire a callback every time. Whereas the web animate, is it called web animations? The web animate property, CSS animate property.
That's confusing.
That's it. Yeah. So there's three different ways. But CSS animation, it does have an iteration callback or something like it. I think.
Got it.
And,
But
and
not every
it'll fire
browser
events.
not every browser supports each one, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so what we could do is, like, say you were to animate scale, like anything, like opacity, which you'd always run completely in WAAPI on the browser. Say you were animating that and you knew that it was going to be iterated, you could run a shadow animation that doesn't output anything, but just for the timing's sake, it would know when it hits these iterations and then fire off a callback.
Oh.
So then, and then expose that as a callback for users, basically.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
it's just a thought, like it's not something I've done, but the fact that it's there, you start thinking, oh, maybe this is like an interesting way I can add a feature
Right.
for minimal bundle size, basically.
Oh, that's really interesting. Sid says that it's a fair trade-off. Maybe in the future, all browsers will have the API built in, and motion will be half the size. That's kind of the dream, right?
Yeah, that'd be really nice. But then there's other things that I'm starting to think, like at the moment, one thing that sort of GSAP anime do that this doesn't is animate SVG attributes. It will animate SVG styles, so you can do a lot like transforms or whatever. And in fact, we could probably do a quick demo of that in a sec.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll find a. But yeah, so
But like in
we
terms of
don't
like
do that.
actual SVG attributes that yeah, so like any CSS kind of transforms that you would add to an SVG, it can handle. But in terms of like changing, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a property at the top of my head, but I'm blanking. I don't know. What kinds of attributes?
Like I'm thinking like CX, CY, so radius.
Got it. So actually like
Things like
drawing the
this.
shapes. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so you can see here that we do get quite a lot still, even though we're not animating SVG attributes. Like you can still do quite a lot with styles. Anyway, so here's an example. Sorry, I just realized that this is only, I've set it for, because Motion One is sponsorware. So you get, it's a private repo, although you have full access to the source code via npm if you want it. But the repo is private just to keep the like maintenance down, I guess, as well.
Okay.
Because it's actually been like a blessing, like to, because this is a side project, you know, so
Right.
to have that, it's been quite minimal overhead. But yeah, so on one of the sort of like benefits that you get for being a sponsor is when you're on one of our examples, you can like live edit in the browser.
Got it. Cool.
But because of that, I just realized that by sending us here, like we won't be able to like live edit this example. But what I wanted to show you was like this SVG drawing animation. And this draw function is just something that you can make yourself. And what it does is return a stroke dash. It's called stroke dash offset.
Right.
And it, yeah. And so it will animate well, here we're doing, we're animating it from 0 to 1, essentially. But normally on SVG paths, all paths are different lengths. So you need to normally know the length of the path before you animate it like that. But here, we've got, oh, if you go to the HTML tab, this property that I only found out about like, I don't know, a few months ago, and it's called path length. And if you set it to a SVG shape, you kind of normalize the
Oh,
length of the path. So then you can animate it using the standard animation across all
I was
whatever you're doing.
I don't think I knew about that. I think I've used like tools that tell you the path length, or I've guessed at it, or something like that. How did I not
Yeah.
know about the path length property? That's wild. Cassie, good to see you. Yes, my favorite SVG technique. Yeah, it's a good one. I think you use it, Cassie, to draw your Cassie swoopy name, right? I think that's your cursive thing. So good to see you. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I don't think I knew about that. That's really handy because I definitely have like some things where my like stroke dash offset or whatever is like 58, or just like some wild number, because like that's the one that it seemed to work with.
That
So
works. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And as someone just pointed out in the chat, you can like poll the path length, but
that's what I
with
think
the
I've
measuring
done.
thing. But we only just put this into frame of motion the other day because we
Cool.
used to use get total path length, but I feel like there might have
Yeah.
been in some browsers like an incompatibility with circle and all these other elements. But this works with rect, circle, path. Um, so now we
That's
don't need
funny.
to measure the path, and what it means is that we can with this like small utility function support these path length animations at like basically no bundle size because the browser support is so good these days for
Oh,
path
that's
length.
awesome.
Obviously, like if you need like 100% browser support, then things like GreenSock still like essentially bulletproof. But if you're targeting the majority of browsers,
Like many
um,
browsers got it, because Cassie's saying that path length might be wonky in IE, so that
yeah,
might be the case. Got
I
it.
won't be surprised. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
wonky is probably a really
a friendly,
nice way of
yeah,
putting.
yeah, friendly way of
Yeah,
describing IE at this point. Yeah,
yeah.
good point. Awesome. So that makes sense. So not everything is directly animatable with WAAPI in general. This is an interesting syntax. I'm excited to get into this, like
Oh,
this circle and the
yeah, cool.
function
Okay, so
aspect here. I don't. I'm not trying to say let's go do this. I'm just saying that's cool. I kind of want to like just. I'm excited to see this because like being able to call this function and it gets the progress and everything. I don't know, looking forward to it when we think the time is right. So
well, I can. Well, okay, so yeah, it depends. We can do it now.
all right.
There's no, yeah, because I'm actually like not as familiar with timeline as you might imagine as someone who wrote this function, but
All
um,
good.
it's actually super inspired by because I'm way more familiar with like declarative animations using frame of motion. But timeline's something I've wanted to write because I know that GreenSock offers it, and I just thought it'd be great if there was like a WAAPI version,
Mm.
essentially. So I made this, and it works not dissimilar to the animate function. Actually, it is just a series of like animate calls. It's like an array of
Okay.
animate calls.
Oh,
Um,
one thing.
so
I'm
if
I'm
oh
I'm
yeah.
I'm so sorry to throw a wrench. You had us make two here. Am I able to do scale inside here, or
Yeah,
is
so
this
this is just to say that you could
you
do that.
can
You
do
can
that?
do them
Okay,
independently.
cool.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make
and
sure
like,
that that was not the way they had to do it, like break each one out into a separate one. Cool.
oh
Sorry
yeah,
to,
no,
to completely derail and say timelines, forget it. No, I just had that and I didn't want to let that slip just in case that was like a gotcha. Sorry. So timelines, you're saying it's just a
you can.
sequence
So,
of
and
animations.
yeah, but just to you can as well. So you've got like a scale when you put scale back in that object there, and you've
Yeah.
got duration 3. You can still do if you get rid of that line 10, because what that will do is cancel the first one and then animate it to one. But after duration 3, you can do comma uh, scale colon make a new object
Okay.
and then type in duration 1. So you can do per property options. as
What
well.
what did that just do?
So
Oh.
that essentially
Oh.
overrides. You've got your default options, but then you can override per property.
That's
Um,
cool. That's really
so
cool. So this will be the default. So if I have like 10 things here, like color, or would it be fill? No, probably because I think it's a div, right? Uh, Dodger blue, and then we
nice.
go duration. Got it. So then I can do background color like 10, and that'll take. Awesome. That's really. I think that worked. No, wait. Oh no. So no, that did not work because I didn't make it an object. Yeah, now it's going nice and slow. That's really neat. I love that I can kind of bundle a whole bunch of changes or transforms or whatever you want to call them, but also kind of like fine tune them within the second object. That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's
for
nice.
pointing that out.
I use it. Oh, no worries. It just came to mind, and as well, I just remembered. Yeah, before you're right. I shouldn't have been so eager to jump onto the timeline, because there are a few things that I have
Yeah.
forgotten to mention. So, with which one's going quite slow? So, background color is a great example. So, background color is already going at 10 seconds. So, if you wrap Dodger Blue in an array,
Okay.
and then
Interesting.
after Dodger Blue, maybe do like green, blue, tomato.
We've
Now, at
got a
least to
few
make your
colors. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're gonna say something?
no, you're. I'm just saying your color selection is much more inspired than mine is.
We've got a few though that we kind of go back to here on the stream. Dodger Blue and Tomato are two pretty good ones.
Okay, they're established phase. So, yeah, so you can see that went between the two keyframes, but you can define as many as you want there. You could do yellow, green, or the house favorites.
So is that taking? Okay. So it's doing all those within the 10 seconds. It's not giving 10, 10, 10, 10, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And the other thing that you can do is if it's the first keyframe in, because obviously what you've done there, like all these others, Y scale, what they're doing is animating from their current value. But as soon as you've written these keyframes, they sort of you've got this like static start point that you it's like, well, hold on, I actually wanted to animate from whatever I was to Dodger Blue. So
Right.
if you as your first keyframe type in null, comma,
Sorry, my first keyframe. Oh, here.
yeah, is null.
Got it. Wait.
So that's like a wildcard keyframe.
So the difference there. Oh yeah, it was popping up Dodger Blue. I didn't even notice. Got it. Okay, so that just leaves a space. So hey, whatever the current property is, that'll override it, but then everything else will come after it. That's awesome. And Cassie, plum is very much your color. Yeah, that's that I see as you. So cool. That's really cool.
I just noticed as well. I just want to say hi, Cassie and Oliver, because
Yeah, and Oliver Turner's here.
hello,
Great to see you.
yeah. But the duration 3, to answer your question, is so we've overridden it in quite a few there, but we haven't overridden it in Y. So Y is still getting animated with the duration 3.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Cassie was asking what is being animated by duration 3 at the moment.
Got it. Yeah, these two, right?
And it's the Y still, yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Oh,
Because
ever
we did overwrite scale. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Awesome. And so yeah, if we continue to add things and not add custom durations, they will just pick up this kind of a default duration, or not default. We're setting it, but we're not specifying for that Y. So that's really cool. That's a great API. And this, I feel like we've gone so far beyond this at this point that trying to do these kinds of like trying to chain 4 color changes with just WAAPI would be kind of a nightmare.
Actually, that WAPI's got really good keyframe support. It's
Okay.
definitely yeah. So we just do. I like this simple array syntax because that's what I use in Frame of Motion. But WAPI supports that, and it supports like whole objects. So if you pass like an array as the first argument, then within that you can pass like objects. So you can do like whole keyframes full of multi-value. So in some ways,
cool.
WAAPI is actually, I've been quite opinionated on that, but I'd like to try and do the simple API. But for some other use cases, that's actually probably a more simple approach.
Interesting. All right, WAAPI, I'm intrigued. All right, I'm intrigued by this. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this API, this way of animating, Matt. This is really cool. What do we want to touch on next? Is there anything more in here that we want to touch on? Like any kind of like, is there a repeat property? I think you were mentioning something about that.
Yeah, I think if you just do repeat infinity, it should work. I'm wondering now. Yeah, I did worry. Because, yeah. Well, maybe that's expected. I don't
Does
know.
anyone else hear music when this play? Like a little bit of yeah, I'm definitely, that's pretty fun though. It's still pretty fun.
Yeah, it might be that, because what I want to do is it might be that we pad out the keyframes for any durations that aren't hitting that. So find the maximum duration and then pad the other keyframes out.
Got it.
So that they all repeat on the same thing. I'm not sure if that would be expected.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I expected it just now. But I knew what was going to happen.
Okay.
Because I knew the bug, but or if it's a bug or expected behavior, I don't know.
Got it. But it's because of these durations that are kind of throwing it off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
And yeah, so it depends. Oh, and now they're all going to be a bit funny. But if you refresh the page, like oh no, they're not.
Yeah,
they're working okay.
That's working how I expect.
Awesome.
So
yeah. So I see we've got timelines next, but I always feel bad for using a box, like especially when I know like if Cassie's on the stream as well, and there's probably like so many like delightful like illustrative examples, and I'm always like, right, here's a box. Like
no pressure. It's all good.
But anyway, here is a box, and I was thinking of
there we go.
Jumping. We can take a look at timelines, but first, I was thinking if we tried springs. If I show you springs for a sec.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's check out the spring guide. I'm gonna drop this to the chat in case they're following along. Cool. Oh, yeah, it's a good point, Sid. Yeah, if you wanted to do something like that, it'd be a big challenge if you normalize the duration for infinity in motion. Good call. Awesome. So we're gonna check out springs. How would you just describe spring animation to someone besides the way that you've written it? Maybe you've already described it. Should we just read this?
We can. Yeah, I think that's actually probably. I've probably written this description so many times that if it is succinct, it's only after about 1 million.
That's the thing. It's kind of mean if I'm like, all right, describe it better than the way that you've polished it here. Animate transforms using real spring physics. This produces more natural feeling animations, and chat can probably see it as like the square turns, but then doesn't just like hard stop, kind of wobbles to like it feels like it's got a bit of real life spring momentum to it, and it just is a nicer feel. Yeah. I kind of I associate it with like a bouncies.
Yeah, totally. And it because you can do bounces with cubic beziers, but there's always something a little stilted about the way that they end, unless you're incredibly talented. And like there's usually just I can't really describe it. Like, and I've tried a few times because basically, but I've never really managed. Like, I feel like you can always tell when it's a real spring versus a Bezier curve.
Interesting. I'm sure you can. I'm not sure if I have those skills, but I know like animation experts definitely can like spot stuff like that. And they can also like spot like why an animation's like, that feels a little bit off. Like the squash and the stretch isn't right or something like that, right? Where I'm just like, that looks cool. But But I definitely think that like, you know, kind of getting like real springs involved helps in a lot of ways. So David,
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So we can take a look in because I want to show you a couple of things that we do with these. Because so the way that this works is like in pop motion and therefore frame of motion, because frame of motion is built on pop motion. We have like full value type interpolation. So if you are to animate, wait, no, is that a really good way of explaining it? Probably not. Okay, so
Nice.
pop motion runs once a frame. Same with green sock and any other like request animation frame based
Okay.
JavaScript animation library. So with these libraries, it's like pretty like easy, I guess, to take the latest time, create a new frame, commit it, and then that's your job done. But with WAAPI, we don't have access to the per frame events. So because it's always ostensibly this could be running off the main thread as well. It's
Okay.
not, but it could be, and that's the I could get onto why that is. But bottom line is you need to pre-calculate all of the keyframes before you even run the animation, which could be like that could be quite a lot of overhead, I guess. So like especially if you have a spring, so to just quick I don't know anything about physics, but I know enough that if you have like a stiffness value, which is like how strong the spring is going to move, and you turn damping down to 0, that's saying that the damping is like the opposing force. It's a thing that's going to slow the spring down over time.
Okay.
If that's 0, then it's going to last forever, which isn't a problem in these like in pop motion that will just run forever. But that it is literally impossible to like if we're going to calculate all of these springs. Well, you can't just have a while loop that pre-calculates keyframes forever and then passes this infinitely large array to WAAPI. It's not going to, it's not going to work. And go ahead.
Is it WAAPI that needs things to be calculated ahead of time? That's like a rule with WAAPI.
It's not a rule with WAAPI. It's just that because WAAPI doesn't support springs,
right,
and it doesn't give you like any, like if it had, I guess like in a hypothetical, if it had a room for a callback, where I guess animation work could potentially work like this, where you can affect the progress value once every frame, then you're probably looking at something.
Yeah. People have said that I love that song. It's been WAAPI
it's like the word meal. Like the more I say meal, the more I question the fabric of reality. Like, is this meal? That can't be a real word. And I guess WAAPI's on the same lines. But yeah, and the other thing so we have to pre-calculate the things because WAAPI doesn't support this. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is that we only can do this for the file size because we have these individual transforms with the CSS, which are the CSS variables. That there's an API restriction on this that you can only animate them as numbers.
Okay.
Because as soon as you start getting into interpolation of anything more complex, you're really bringing up the bundle size again. So if you want to animate between scale 2 and translate X, for instance, it's 2 transform strings. You're going to have to break those down into matrices, and then so you see what I mean? Like you have all of this kind of overhead, and it's the same with any other type. Like it could be filters or I don't know, more like a border radius, and you specify 2 strings where each top, left, right, bottom. Got all 4 sides named. Where you specify all 4 sides, you animate between the 2. You're going to have to start doing things like breaking down the strings. Okay, there's 4, or actually there's 3 in this one and 4 in that one. So using the rules of like margin when you specify 4 in a row, or if you do 3, then it repeats one of the. So you're going to have to bake all of this into the animation library. And one of my primary things is to keep the bundle size down. So
got it.
So
once
we
again,
only
trade-offs.
Yeah, totally. And so we only do transforms. But if you go down onto the next the thing here, so this shows you that we're actually already. Opacity is probably a bad example because it is a number, but what we do instead of opacity is not something that really makes sense as a spring. So what we do is if
Yeah,
you
you can't go
define
past
like
one or below zero, so it gets kind of
exactly, yeah,
funky.
yeah, totally. So what we do is so transforms get animated because with a real spring because they're physical properties that I was about to say deserve it. I don't know if that's what I meant, but they deserve to be treated
They deserve the
to a
bounce.
spring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think, hey, chat, you all deserve a little bit of spring in your life. All right.
exactly. Yeah, and it works great with scale, X, Y, rotate, etc. But opacity, what we do is as you can see here, the opacity is animating from 0 to 1 only until the moment when that scale hits its like biggest. Oh, sorry, the first time that it hits its subsequent resting
Hits
point.
one, it's not going to come back down to 90 or to point
Yeah,
0.9 and then back up to like 1.1 and kind of nice.
yeah. So
That's really
it does.
handy.
So the way it does that is it. How does it do it? It like pre-calculates some like generic spring based on the same properties that's
Cool.
been given to these other things, and it will find the first moment it overshoots, and then it gives that duration to a typical WAAPI animation,
Got
and
it.
just says animate for this long. And as you say, it just stops that sort of opacity bouncing, or if it was a color or something like that.
Nice.
Um, and you could use the full duration, but I feel like you once it's hit that overshoot point, you don't want you want it to be the opacity to be 1 by then. You want the animation to have already hit its target rather than it's like doing this bouncy thing and you're still animating to 1. It just feels, I don't know, it was a bit of a guess, but I feel like that
Yeah.
like works quite nice.
No, it's all good. And all we have to do to get it is to import it and call it for the easing. That's it. And then it can probably take some like some settings and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I'm gonna remove the repeat. Actually, no, I don't have to. That's actually pretty
I don't
cool.
know, it seems to be
Whoa,
enjoying
this is yeah.
I
I
suspect what is going
David,
on there?
what you said about the color blending between RGB colors, totally hear you. David's kind of our resident color expert. Cassie, I think you've been using the FET palette, and David, I know I'm
Oh
saying that
yeah, I
wrong.
just thought that
Um,
is probably like a seizure
yeah.
risk.
Let's see. Why is that going so hard though?
It's because there's probably because there's so many keyframes and it's getting like I just told you, like when it calculates that first overshoot moment, which is usually like quite a short duration. It's probably squeezing all of those colors into like a very short amount of time, basically. So now it should. Oh, is that even true? Oh, because and so it's that in combination with the bug that we uncovered,
Okay.
or bug, we don't go pending feature, where where the
Well done.
each one of those. So the background color has been calculated with the smallest duration, the first overshoot point, but then it's repeating lots of times rather than waiting until the end of the whole animation.
Oh man, it's
So
doing.
that's so if you repeat, yeah. So this is going to look, you see, like it.
Got it. Okay. So
So, but yeah, so that's basically what is happening there. And if you give Spring, so at this point, duration, by the way, is being like ignored. We're dynamically calculating a duration based on
oh.
what the Spring, because
Oh.
the Spring has like intrinsic properties, and for it to feel, for it to correctly simulate like with the because this what will happen if you animate if you interrupt like a spring animation, it will know the current velocity and incorporate that into the subsequent animation, and for that to happen correctly it kind of needs to run for the duration that it's calculated it will run, because if you try and
Got it.
squeeze it into like a shorter duration it's going to feel like it will feel like a different spring.
Got
So
it.
yeah,
David,
that's
I'm sorry.
essentially.
So David tried to ban the word animation. I'm going to say it just so that Matt knows what we're saying. Unfortunately, you don't get your 2000 back. It's a very, very tough word for me to avoid in this stream. We've we've got a word ban feature that people can spend kind of their watching points on. It gets very tough.
Oh, I didn't know. So I didn't know. Is there
Oh,
a list somewhere that I should?
no, it's completely for me. I never
Oh,
would put
okay.
that on the guess. But chat's usually good about finding the words that I say way too often, like the word "right" as someone else is talking, and they ban that, and I have to sit here going, "Mm-hmm." So it's fun. It's fun. It's a good time. Um,
You said that
okay.
almost on the verge of tears. I feel
Yeah, no, it's
it's a
fun. Yeah,
good time. It's
just
fun.
one
Yeah.
tier. Yeah, they're my friends.
Oh yeah, that does sound like straight up bullying.
That is just mean. Yeah. Um, awesome. So we can't do a repeat for this one. Is what we're saying?
You can do a repeat, I think.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Oh, we were just
Ah,
getting.
yes. So that's it. So this is the problem, and I think this is, we've all learned a little something. So
Yeah, it's all
what
good.
I will probably do for a subsequent release is detect when we're doing multiple values and just ensure that they're all if they're the same, if there's a repeat and they're all the same duration, we can pad out the remaining keyframes with like a week. So that null that you passed in earlier, where it took
Yeah.
the existing, you can put nulls anywhere in the keyframe array, and it will
Uh,
take the previous thing. So it's a good way of like keeping a value the same for a little duration of time.
cool.
Um, so we use that quite extensively in the timeline function
Okay.
to that's that wasn't like a super smooth segue.
Oh
But
no.
the way you
Speaking
looked
of
at me, I was like,
timelines,
yeah.
no, no. Um,
Um,
before we hop on the timelines, I would love if we could just kind of see some of these properties at work. Is it just you have
oh yeah,
velocity, damping? Do you recommend just passing one, or do you kind of have? I think for yeah. So like I might be conflating with React Spring, where there's like some defaults that kind of ship with it, right? Where it's like you can sometimes boing boing. Um, that's fun. I'm gonna do it again.
oh yeah. So this is one of those moments where you probably want to start giving it. So velocity is one of those that you do probably want to give on a per value basis, because if you think
Got
about
it.
like it's not so bad like rotation and y, you could probably give the same velocity, but scale, if you give it a velocity, a starting velocity of 1,000, that's why you're getting
Yeah.
that massive thing. So it's actually, so the per properties are on the, you'd be overwriting easing itself. So instead
Got
of
it.
putting it, not giving it to
Okay.
spring, you can give spring velocity 1,000, but then give scale a special easing with a spring
Got it.
velocity.
Whoa, we
So
just got rated by Bruno Simone. Bruno, great to see you. Bringing 83 people through. Bruno, how's it going? How was your stream? Thank you so much. To do a quick shout out to Bruno. So, Matt, in case you're not aware, basically, Bruno was streaming, brought its audience over here. They're now watching us. We are checking in with Matt Perry. Matt is the creator of Framer Motion and the new Motion 1. This is I'm going to try my best to say, actually, I'm just going to read it. It's a new animation library built on the Web Animations API. It's got a very small bundle size, really good performance. We're checking it out. We're learning about it. So if you are familiar with Framer Motion or Pop Motion or Pose, this is a new library, not to replace Framer Motion, but as a really cool animation library to make using the Web Animations API a whole lot easier. And thank you for those follows. You said the word. I said animation? No, I didn't. I don't think I said the word that was banned. I doubt I said it. Wow. Grudge if you said the word loads. Yeah, the word animation has been IRL word banned. I will pay whatever fine the Twitch gods impose upon me. So I am apologetic, but
at their
also
mercy.
I'm going to continue sinning and using the word. So I
I did think
apologize.
that it would be it's quite a thought. Yeah, I was
Do
about to say, yeah,
do you,
get a gunge tank and your viewership is gonna work for Timmy Mallet. That's
listen,
probably a
listen.
deep cut
I
for
don't
the
even
80s UK.
Oh man, yeah, something's happening here. But yeah, Bruno, thank you so much. I'm sure you made something incredible. Are you working on the small, like the tiny style one? Because the last time I saw you working on something super super cool. But yeah, we are learning about Motion One. I'll drop the link real quick. And yeah, Matt Perry is with us. Thank you so much for coming by. Do you need to take a drink if you actually accidentally use banned words? Yes, yes, that's a new rule. If I say the banned word, you have to drink. So it's on you actually. It's not my fault. um, cool. So we were just setting this. Bruno, thank you again. Good to see you. So that's going to change the velocity for the y, right?
Let me
Oh,
quickly. So it's actually that's it. Yeah, exactly. And then you'd give y an easing with a spring
okay.
with a velocity. Yeah, this is probably not one of my favorite bits of the API, but it was also necessary
Got
for
it.
it to be possible. I think
Yeah,
like
it
it
gets
wasn't.
tricky when you start to like nest the like when you're architecting this. I'm kind of just guessing at what it might be, but that's all good. Um, I don't mean to get too much in the weeds. Let's keep
Yeah,
going
but
with
essentially
the
it
fun
is
stuff.
possible.
Got it.
But we can what we can do actually if we jump we could jump. Is there anything that you wanted to see more about the spring? Because we could use this for the timeline.
Let's go with it. Yeah, yeah. Let's
So
get timelines in here.
if you import timeline from Motion,
Cool.
and you could actually just replace. I say confidently, like probably you could probably just replace animate with timeline, and
Okay.
then wrap the arguments in one array first.
Okay. So starting like this
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah. Actually, you can just do that twice, and I'll explain what that means in a sec.
Do that twice. You mean
Yeah.
no? I sorry. You mean like that?
No. So if you so delete that. So now you've got your array. What you've made there is like
Yeah.
a sequence array. So timeline's first argument is a sequence, and it's an array
Okay.
basically. And but each item in the array is an array of arguments to the animate function.
Got it.
So if
So
you then yeah exactly.
I
So
need
I
double
think
nested
that
arrays.
yeah. Apart
Cool.
from that, so spring. Oh yeah. Okay.
So I need a second one.
If you just comment out the easing for a sec, like we'll put that back in a second. This is a like a I don't know,
Whoops. Hold on one sec.
it's a limitation of the thing. So yeah, okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so timeline's an array, and essentially every item within the array is it's the same. You'll probably recognize the pattern of this array, and well, because we literally just modified it from animate.
Got it.
So you get like so instead of animate brackets, you just put an array and do that. So
So it's the
if
property I want to
you
animate, the things I want to do to it, and then some of the like options and things about the animation.
exactly.
Cool.
So now if you make a new like a second comma, and you can do the same again like with the same box, maybe animate y back to 0 or something.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So now we can sort of see how you build up these sequences, but you can actually use spring in the array. So by
Okay.
default, like every time that you call one of these things, it's going to sequence it like after the previous one. So you build up like this sort of sequence of actions.
Okay.
But even if you use this spring, which dynamically generates duration, it will still like plonk it at the end of the previous one. So if you, but there's a limitation, which will do. This is the error that you just got. So if you uncomment easing spring on maybe the yeah, okay, no, this one will do. This is fine. Just but let's just do the second one for a sec. Now spring must be provided when it's used within a timeline. It has to be provided both the start and end keyframes. So what you can do is replace y here So you can't see that I'm like where I'm pointing.
Just point. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just there.
Yeah.
Look, I'm pointing right at it. This is yeah. So if you replace like y 200s with an array that's 0, comma 200.
So this specific property
So
here.
no, yeah. So replace the 200 with the array. Do you remember the array, the
Oh,
keyframes that we were using earlier?
yeah.
So now and then, yeah, and then actually, if we just get rid of scale and rotate, just to because otherwise
Yeah, yeah.
we'll be making
We'll be here
keyframes for all of them.
all day. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the same one here. So you can do like another keyframes where it goes from 0 to 200, I guess. Um, so now you can build up timelines of
Oh,
springs. But this is so I'm not super happy with this API. Like um, the reason it is because we don't when to pre-gen. This is the part of the limitations on the pre-generation of springs. Like when we're generating this timeline, unless they're like we need to do another pass basically to figure out what that initial keyframe is. Maybe measure it from the DOM or something. But for now, you kind of have to explicitly say like you're coming from here to here, and that way we can generate a spring that is those keyframes.
got it. Because the spring needs to go and calculate all the frames for this animation to how to move one to the other.
Yeah, exactly. And
Cool.
like obviously we know like it's not impossible to look at this and imagine how we can get that initial keyframe, especially for the second one, because we've got 0 to 200, but the
Mm-hmm.
last keyframe we had was 0. So we already know that. But it's just, I wanted to get it out and make it possible first and then come back like later
Refine the
because this was
API.
that extra, yeah, this is that extra layer of
Awesome.
complexity. And so I always like to make things possible first and then um, do your spring animations have duration? So they don't. What they do is like dynamically return the duration. But in pop motion, we do have and frame motion, we've got like a bounce and duration pair. So this is stiffness damping. But at one point, and this is one of those things where I kind of, again, in the quest to reduce the bundle size. But what I suppose we could do is like have a separate import that's like duration spring. But the code's all there, like so it's not something that's like impossible. Like we'll be able to do it basically. Um, yeah.
Ooh, how to
Oh, so
select
yeah,
keyframe.
so as I'm saying, like the duration is pre-calculated for us because that's the other thing. We need to calculate this duration for WAAPI to even be able to play the animation back like appropriately. Because every WAAPI in pop motion, you just tell it to run the spring, and when you're done, you're done. Like you don't need a duration to run an animation, especially a spring animation. But because in WAAPI we need to pre-generate the animation before we give it to WAAPI, we can literally just take the array and count how many. I'm not sure we actually do it this way, but I think at some point we were doing this way. Wait, I feel like I said way, like as if I should have said Ray. I think at this point I probably talked more than I've ever. I was like,
We've
did
said
I say that with
WAPI.
a what?
We've said WAPI
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much that it's broken our brains, and language is
Like,
just
is
a
that soft
construct. It
R?
means nothing. Yeah,
They're gonna
if
send me back to elocution lessons.
if chat
Way,
understands
it's fine.
anything, awesome. Because yeah, we're just
At
making
this
it up
point,
over here.
we're down the rabbit hole now.
No, but it's making
Yeah. So
sense.
anyway, because we have to pre-generate the animation. We know exactly how many frames it is, and we know the time interval that we use to generate those keyframes. So we can literally times the time interval by the number of keyframes, and then we've got our duration, and we use that in the timeline to know when to sequence our subsequent animations. And it's the same with animate. That's the value we give to WAPI to say, okay, here's an animation. It's like 100 keyframes. You need to run it for 2 seconds for this to look correct. So
Got it.
yeah, but I do want to do one where you can define because it's stiffness stamping is not a nice API,
It's not as
but
intuitive
duration.
or something like that. I have to fiddle around with it a bunch to kind of get the thing that's in my mind, right? Like it's tricky. Be like, it needs to be a bit quicker, a bit shorter. It's nice to have that kind of like real world physical control where it's like, this is just like, like I'm essentially playing with physics, but I don't inherently know like, it needs to be bouncier, so I need to change the damping to 23, right? Like that's tough
Yeah.
for me to just kind of it's not as approachable as some other things, but I love the control that it gives you at the same time.
Yeah, totally, and it does. There is a lot of control there, and especially when you're what particularly like about these sorts of springs is gesture to animation transfers. So if you measure the velocity of a pointer and then feed that into the animation using the velocity prop, that sort of thing I really like, and
Cool.
you couldn't do with stiffness. Sorry, duration bounce. But duration bounce to me is more if you're just trying to make a bouncy, nice feeling animation is a more intuitive API. But it does involve like a bunch of like another layer of pre-computation where you have to like figure out you have to essentially reverse engineer stiffness damping back out of your
Right.
desired bounce and stuff. So it's a little bit I don't know. Well, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
probably
No,
do that at some point.
it's a common API, and I think Josh Como has a really good Springs article that might help people through things. And if you know, I think mass for bigger objects, like there are some things that are intuitive, where like how big is this compared to that, and you can kind of make up a mass that makes sense for that big object to kind of have more of a slow slide and a bigger mass compared to a small thing that just might be kind of quick and springy, right?
Yeah, totally, totally.
Awesome. Cool. So we've got timelines and springs going at the same time. Awesome question, Cassie, because that's a really good point about how you're doing this spring animation and kind of figuring it out ahead of time that allows you to do the timelines. That's just, yeah, this is really, really interesting. Did we want to work some staggers in, or were there some other timeline things that we want to touch on?
Yes, I mean, so really, it is just a sequence of animate calls. So there's not much more to timeline. You can give it
Cool.
a second option after the sequence array, where
I
you
was
can
going to
do things
ask.
like yes, if you like do duration two. In this case, it'll probably squash the animation, the whole everything that's been generated. Will probably squash it all down into 2 seconds. And yeah, and in repeat infinity will probably work as well. Perfect. Yeah. So
So,
there's
so
stuff like that.
wait, so we can do a duration on these springs because we have control of the whole timeline?
So
That's really
yeah, but
cool.
only because we've
Right.
generated the spring for the correct duration, and now like if you want to tweak that or stuff it into like something, you can just like squeeze it down or stretch it out.
We can stretch it too. That's super cool.
You can't. I would say you could probably stretch it quite a bit, but if you stretch it too much, you'll probably because all the springs are pre-generated with these
Right.
keyframes,
It's
you're
kind of like
losing accuracy.
pixels. Yeah, like it's like making pixel art way too big, right? It's
Yeah,
not like a vector animation, so to speak. If I'm speaking in terms that I understand, but like yeah, because you've actually generated X number of keyframes, you can't stretch it out to take place over a year smoothly. There are going to
yeah.
be gaps in there because you've generated maybe 1,000 keyframes tops or something like that. So
No,
that's
100%. And we
that's
so you
cool.
do we do a linear interpolation between these keyframes. So it shouldn't be that it looks like totally shit, but like it will
Yeah,
it won't look yeah, it'll get
yeah,
increasingly
but
worse basically.
it's just interesting to think about that mental model and how that works. But I love that I can stretch this spring duration out like that. Chad 97, thank you for that question. Thank you for following. Chad's question I think kind of touches on something that we're going to touch on a little bit later. Chad just asked, can the animation start when the user enters the viewport? So
Yeah, I was quite happy to receive that. Yeah.
yeah, so we'll kind of put a pin in that, Chad, because we kind of have something to talk about in just a bit. But I mean, you can also do that with like an intersection observer or kind of anything like that. But we have something kind of extra special that we'll be talking about soon. A framer motion launch reveal fun thing. So just stay tuned for that, Chad. Great question. Um, Cool. So yeah, I could put all these kinds of. So it's basically the second object, or I guess the third argument of the standard animate goes
Yeah,
after
again.
the arrays.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it's like that same because now we're talking about the timeline animation. These separate like animate segments of building up a bigger animation, and now at the end we can give those default options to control the whole thing
That's really
as
nice.
it's been computed.
Awesome.
There is so if you go, we can quickly touch on stagger.
Okay.
I'm conscious ish of time, but I don't know how long you've got. But
I'm
I've got.
good.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Chat,
yeah. So
are you good? Chat, do you have a hard stop? Just let us know, all right? If you've got to go.
yeah. And this is a veto system. If any one of you are out, then
Yes,
we're all
yeah.
out.
It's
Solidarity.
unfortunately,
No.
yeah, we've got like 60 people in here, so if anyone has to go within the next 20 minutes, we've got to end it. That's the rule. Um, cool.
Yeah.
So stagger.
So stagger obviously only works with multiple elements, but if we go into that sandbox, I assume we can just chuck in a few, maybe two more boxes or something.
Cool. I assume
Just
I,
copy
I
paste
import
them.
it.
Yep, yeah.
Cool.
And then what you do,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, let's just do it for the first one. So after easing on the first segment,
So right in the same thing.
yeah, you can do delay colon stagger, and then 0.2, I guess.
Okay.
Now that's obviously not going to do anything because we've only got one element there. This is entirely stolen from how they do it in anime. To put that out there. So if you just copy paste, I guess ID box, is that going to be a problem for us? Probably not.
I only like I added the ID and then we only used it for the actual WAAPI version, so we can just
Yeah.
go create a few. Nice.
And so because we've done it in time, this works in Animate as well. But what's happening is where we've passed it, the box selector, it knows that it's found multiple elements, but you could also pass it an array of actual elements. So it doesn't just need to be, you could pass it one element, you could pass it an array of elements. Like it doesn't need to be a selector. We've just done that because, it's easy. But if it's passed an array of elements or it finds multiple elements from the selector, then it will figure this out basically. So this delay function is we staggered 0.2 over each one, and it's then gone, okay, so this segment of animation, like with the duration calculated from the spring plus the staggered delay,
Yeah, wow.
like because you can see the next segment doesn't start until all of them have finished this segment. But you can if you go into after the second easing, go comma at colon and then open a string
like that. At
springs going there, strings going there. Yeah, sorry. And open a string and just do -1, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know how this is going to work actually. Because it's so 1 second from the end of the last animation it starts, because we've hard coded these keyframes because we're using spring. You see that last one.
Yeah, like ejects out of it. If you do even higher, it'll just stop it sooner.
Exactly. So if this wasn't a spring and we were just using normal, if that was instead of 0-200, it was just 200, it would start from its current position, but we haven't, so it doesn't. But anyway, that's it. Just to show the stagger behavior.
Oh, got it. Awesome. It's just really satisfying watching it in slow motion. I kind of want to see it in maybe 4 seconds, a little bit. Nice. Yeah, and
you can really tell as well.
What?
Sorry. Well, when you're animating it closer to the real generated spring, there's something about that natural motion that you can tell that this 4 seconds is close probably to what it generated itself.
Yeah, the spring just makes it instantly satisfying. We're not doing any really complicated. I'm not going in and getting a cubic Bezier that I know just looks great or it's going to look great here. We're just kind of we added a bit of a velocity and it's just fun. That's so good. Byte3 asks, how does it work with the gestures? Say if I drag a box and I apply the spring and move the box around the X and the Y axis.
Yeah, so that would probably be beyond the scope of this live stream, just because that would
Yeah.
be there's a road forward. But because you would have to, but essentially what you do, you'd use mouse pointer events to track X and Y yourself, apply that as a style. This is how we do it in frame of motion as well. And every frame, perhaps, well, there's different ways of calculating the velocity, but either every frame you sort of take the, so because I'm not mirrored in this webcam, so every time
It's
I'm
tricky.
moving
So
one
what, yeah,
hand, I'm
you
like,
try to point and you're like, I don't know which way I'm pointing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you would calculate the velocity yourself, either per frame or maybe keep a history of pointer events and take a more averaged velocity. But whatever it is, when you get the pointer up, that's when you'd start an animate call and you'd feed that velocity the same way we've been doing just now. You'd pass the X velocity to the X spring and the Y velocity to the Y spring, and that animation will just pick up with with that same velocity and momentum that your gesture fed into it. And it's especially necessary with the glide easing, which is kind of like spring, but instead it like has that, like you were saying at the start, like that inertia.
Right.
Because if you don't pass it any velocity, unless it's coming out of a existing glide or spring animation, it won't have any. So no animation will play. Like it only right because it's already stops. Like so, it'll only play if you feed that velocity in to begin with. Yeah, but anyway, that's the approach you'd use to tighten with gestures. Although, having said that, one thing I would like to do at some point is to maybe not make a gesture thing, because I don't know, I don't know, I don't know how much I enjoy gestures. I've never really. I sometimes wonder if I've ever actually made a good gesture API. Like the frame of motion one is great,
Okay.
but it's also like that's such an asshole thing to say. I do apologize. It's a great API. But what I
No,
mean is
no, no.
it's literally just a word, and I really like that. So that you can literally just say drag, and
Yeah,
it's
it's nice.
draggable. But there's file size considerations that come with that, and not everyone's going to be using the drag gesture. And I think that's where I fall out of love with it a little bit, in that unless you go through a couple hoops, you can't get rid of that file size. It's in there like by default. So what I'm saying is, like, if I was to go towards more of a gesture thing, I'd like to make it in a way that is like more code splittable, tree shakeable, but is easy to use. And like when I just think of that, I'm like, is that possible? I don't know. So at the very least, we can make it so that if you're making a gesture, that it's easier for you to maintain the velocity throughout.
Got it.
Yeah, I think I haven't looked into this at all, but I feel like the question was,
React to use gesture with motion one.
you've retained your ability to read, whereas personally, I think I've lost it. Yeah, I'm just like looking at it. I'm just like react use gesture, react use gesture. Yeah, how would you do that?
I don't know.
And yeah, I don't know either. But I assume if they give you like an exit velocity from the
You can pop it in here.
yeah, exactly.
Cool.
You might need to,
Awesome.
like, one might be done in seconds and the other one in milliseconds. So it might be the
Easy
case that you
enough.
have to
Yeah.
think about that.
Cool. Awesome. Good question. Oh, byte three. Oh, and Codemaster touched on the wonder thing. You see that in the thing down there. If you type a question with exclamation mark wonder, and then right after, right, it's like, how many people make Matthew Perry jokes? Of course, that's the one that I read. I wonder how. I wonder if Motion One looks awesome. What may be the differences in GSAP in terms of features? So we will capture your question here, and we will get to it by the end of the stream. So that's just what that is, Codemaster. Thank you for taking that for a spin, because we can't always stop and answer questions. So it's just a way that we can make sure that we are not excuse me, not ignoring or neglecting any good questions. Awesome. So we've touched on timelines. We've touched on staggers. Touched on the basic animate. We've touched on springs. We've got a timeline and a spring and an animation kind of all going in this one. I was gonna say pen here, but this is not a code pen. This is a code sandbox. I'm very used to the code pens. It's second nature. So Awesome. That's coming out really cool. Was there anything else we wanted to touch on? Do we want to do glides, or do we want to do something else?
A glide is actually pretty without the gestures. It sort of doesn't make sense, but
Cool. We
that's
can.
actually all I've got. I really I'm trying to keep it a minimal API for now.
Yeah.
I'm working on like a declarative API so that we get some of that frame of motion ease of use, but in vanilla, potentially in Vue, potentially in Svelte, bring
Nice.
some of these capabilities to those libraries. But
So yeah.
oh
So,
yeah,
oh, but
oh I don't know. Yeah, it's a
yeah. I
simple
think
answer. Yeah, I
that's
haven't
what we're
looked
saying.
into
Is
it.
yeah. We don't have the experience with that library specifically, but if it is possible, you'll be able to pass it into something like this where easing glide. So say you get it from React use gesture. You'll be able to pass it in
I'm
as that value
Yeah,
potentially.
I'm almost certain. Like it's a pretty like from what I know of it, it's a pretty great library with a kind of like a low level philosophy. So if they
Cool.
didn't
So
give you
they'll
that information,
expose that.
I'd be surprised. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Do we have anything else on our schedule? I think we're just gonna kind of say combining all those things. We did that. We combined springs and timelines and staggers. Any performance gotchas that we should be aware about or aware of, and kind of we're just gonna ask when should I reach for motion one? When should I reach for framer one? Like yeah, like if I'm starting a new site up, how do I know which one to choose?
Okay, so there's the performance gotchas and the frame of motion versus motion one.
Yeah.
Okay, so performance gotchas. The performance guide probably covers most of this, and I really
Cool.
would like, even if you're not going to ever use Motion One, I'd give it a read because I'd cover like a lot of like the sort of the basic things and maybe a few advanced things that you want to know when you're doing animations on the web.
Awesome.
But I would say the one gotcha that I can think of is that we do independent transforms, which you can't do in WAAPI, but we do them via CSS variables, as you might have seen if you were there to start the stream. WAAPI doesn't hardware accelerate CSS variables, so if you have to, and I consider like the hardware acceleration, the off-thread animations, a bit of like a progressive enhancement sort of thing. Like if it's there, it's amazing. If it's not there, it's like not the end of the world. But I do recognize that there's some people that like for whatever they're doing, like they must have this because their app is like it does a lot of on-thread work. For those people, definitely use transform itself, not the individual transforms.
Got it.
So yeah, and so I'd stick to and I do cover this ish, but I'd stick to transform and opacity basically, and
Okay.
you've got the best chance of running on the main thread. Sorry, off
Awesome.
the main thread.
Yeah. Right.
And as for motion one versus frame motion, are you using React? If you're using React, I would reach for frame of motion. If you're not using it, then you literally can't. And so I'd recommend this instead, or the library of your choice. But yeah, so if we ever did, what I want to do is like bring this into like a small version of frame of motion, like with a limited API or
Cool.
something. I don't know what we're going to do or how we're going to do it, but it'd be amazing to do because the file size savings from this is quite substantial. Like if the motion .dev homepage is actually this whole page is running on a for me version. It's like motion one for React, and it's got like in Viewport. These are all triggered when when they come into view and
Oh yeah.
um, and that's all using like a special. It's like kind of. I mean, if you want it, you could probably like dig it out of like motion forward / React when you import, but it's not worth it. It's not documented, but that will probably look like if we do something with frame of motion, it will probably look like that. But the file size, sorry, the file size is like 4K, so that's like that's pretty small. Like so, that's the sort
Yeah.
of thing that we're trying to get towards. But for
Yeah.
now, frame of motion.
Cool. Okay.
In fact,
So
what I
yeah.
would say is probably forever frame motion. If you're like an advanced, you guys are all probably quite advanced. if we do something that involves motion one, it'll probably be very like for the people who need just the simple bits, basically, you know, like the press gesture in view, variants, stuff like that.
Awesome. Really, really cool library, man. Thank you so much for showing it to us, for walking us through the different features. Yeah, it's just something. It's a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Ah,
Yeah.
my pleasure.
Oh,
Thanks for
yeah.
having me.
Yeah. Well, we're not done because you got something to
Oh yeah,
announce.
yeah.
Speaking of framer motion, so just chat once again. I want to make sure you have a good mental model at home. Framer motion, or at least some kind of separation of the two. Framer motion is okay. Not part of Framer, but it is a motion library that is kind of like put out by Framer or with. How would you put it?
No, that's a great. For me, I'd just say it's a React animation library. But in regards to Framer, like now there's like a whole. So if you use Framer, and especially if you don't, you can use Framer, start using Framer, and you can create components. You can design animations, and then you can export them directly from Framer
That's
into
cool.
your next JS project. And under the hood, all of those animations will use Framer motion.
That's really
So
cool.
yeah, so that's basically where it ties in. But that's actually brand new. That's within the last month that we released that capability. So
That's not Handshake, is it, or is that something else?
yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, handshake.
got it. Nice, very
So it's
cool.
kind of like not, like you have handoff. Now you
Got
don't
it.
need handoff. You've got like handshake essentially.
Hands on,
Um,
good.
yeah,
Awesome. And yeah, I've heard that framer motion is like excellent for flip animations and all kinds of. Oh, and there you go. You got some of that stuff that Byte 3 was talking about. This might come in handy if you're using React Byte. But yeah, so framer motion, one motion, two different libraries that you have created both. But you have an announcement for a new framer motion feature, right?
yeah. So it's Frame Motion 5.3, and it is. Oh wow! I didn't expect the emojis to look like that.
Is
On
is that okay?
are
Oh,
you
oh,
up?
so PC. This is PC. So I
Oh,
apologize
the
if that
PC
they
emojis.
that they
No,
look
no, no.
different.
That's cool.
Yeah,
No, it's
chat.
nice to see it in a different.
If the colors don't blend perfectly, it's my fault. Or no, it's Bill Gates' fault, not my fault.
Yeah.
But they do on Mac. They blend perfectly. So just letting you know.
No, it's just cool. Like I didn't know they had a different style, so it's cool to see. But yeah. So this is scroll triggered animations. So if you're familiar with the while tap or the while hover props, they're super easy ways of adding like gesture animations. So you can say like while hover scale 1.2, while tap scale 0.9. And it will figure out all of the interactions between that. This is while in view. So now, as you scroll these elements into view, they
That one just doesn't
automatically.
exist on PC.
What I'm thinking, which fruit does Bill Gates hate? Blueberries.
Blueberries. Yeah,
He
he's
hates
actually
blueberries.
allergic. People don't know
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Um. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I can't even begin to imagine that. Well, that's the blueberries are the best fruit.
They're
I'm just gonna
pretty
go out and
good. They're
say it.
pretty darn good. Yeah, they're definitely top 10.
They're the most more. I think because they're so Moorish, and you can just get through. Like you can just keep going basically
Yeah,
with blueberries.
yeah,
That
for
was
sure.
fun.
You can't do like 5 apples. But yeah, so okay, so this is working.
Yeah. So that's yes. This is the code. So normally you'd have to get involved with intersection observer to sort of trigger, set your thresholds and trigger when animations come into view. But now we've got this container div. It's a motion.div. Motion in frame of motion, every animated component is like motion dot your HTML name. So here we've got while in view equals on screen. And so that's just saying that for me and any of my motion children, set them to on screen when things come into view. So on screen by itself doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
But what you can do as the developer is then go in. You see, we've got this child here called with the class name card,
Here, got it. Motion div, got it.
and we've got this card variants. Well, variants are different visual styles, and if you click through to the card variants with the command
nice.
click. So here we've got our off-screen and our on-screen variants, and off-screen we have Y is 300, and when something comes on screen, we've defined it to animate to 50, the rotation of -10, with a spring transition, using actually the bounce duration that Cassie was getting at earlier. This is that in
got it. Okay.
In it's in frame of motion. It's not in motion one, but this is that we're talking about. So as they come in, you can, this one in this demo, we set it to you can pass through some options called in the viewport object. And so we're basically here, we're saying only fire it once. So when something's in the viewport, only animate to that one time. When it leaves, don't animate back out of it.
Got it. So if we do false, it'll do the thing that annoys me when sites do it, where like as I come back up, it's still like, okay, we're still doing this, folks. But for the cards, that is pretty fun, to be honest.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I chose the one. I think I've probably. The thing is, so we've got these. There's also two event handlers that you can pass to this called like on viewport enter and on viewport leave.
Okay.
So and you don't even need to be animated to use this. You can just say now the same way that you'd have like on pointer down. You can do on viewport leave for any motion div, which is super handy. But it adheres to the same rules as this viewport thing. So once true might not like align with your expectations as the way that because it once on viewport enter fires, you'll never get an on viewport leave because it hasn't left, which is quite good when you're trying to sync the behavior of those callbacks to the animation, because you might be doing something with like a React set state where you're updating some HTML or something based on viewport visibility. So this way, if once is true, like you don't have to worry about on viewport leave ever firing again, because it's not going to. Cool. And there's also, you can also in the intersection observer, you get the chance to provide a different DOM element. So say you've got like a carousel and all the items are coming in and out of the carousel. You can use the carousel itself as the sort of like the viewport.
That's the viewport. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So you can pass a ref through that if you're familiar with React REST. Yeah, that's it basically. That's the I'm glad to have done it, to be honest, because this is one that I've wanted for a long time. I had it, like I was saying, that Motion One homepage has had it, and since doing it there, I kind of was like, I've got to get this out one way or the other. And and so this is the so it's out now actually. So I'll post the docs.
Yeah,
in fact, I'll post the docs in the sandbox.
5.3 right there. And I'll drop this somewhere over here. And byte 3, GreenSock does have scroll trigger if you're not using React. Yeah, so if that's the feature you need, GreenSock does have scroll trigger. Byte might be talking about the inertia thing still. Not sure, but let us know. Do you have like 5 more minutes to handle the questions that chat collected, or rather?
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Our friend Nino Pepper, aka Thomas, asks, "I wonder, does motion also trigger the vanilla animation start animationed APIs?"
The events? No, it doesn't. Well, if these are the events, and actually probably it will just naturally by virtue of like us starting and stopping animations on WAAPI. But I really feel like WAAPI doesn't fire those events. I could be very wrong though, so this is something you should check. But I remember looking into it, and I remember things like this is like where I was talking to you about the iteration callbacks. They don't fire with WAAPI, but they do fire with CSS animations. So basically, if these exist with WAAPI, they do, but if not, then they don't. The reason why I didn't add them in is because what Motion One's trying to be is like a subset or an opinionated wrapper around WAAPI. So we don't have to support everything, but we do support something. So when you fire animate, the animation will start like kind of automatically. But then we also have a dot finished promise, and that's the way WAAPI has it too, but that's the way we've decided. Like, there's no callback approach. It's like dot finished is like kind of the animation end approach. It's just it's just so that when we do things like polyfills and stuff like that, we only have to support like the very specific bits of the API that we've chosen to expose to the user. So the less that we can expose, the more we can sort of support across all browsers. The finished polyfill is a good example of something that doesn't exist in, like, it was a really modern version of Chrome on Android that I just didn't I wasn't expecting this, but we detect, like, does this animation have a promise, finished polyfill, finished promise? If not, like, let's make one. Yeah, so that's basically how you do animation end on if the events don't happen naturally, which, you know, I haven't tested them, but they might.
Cool. Awesome. Thomas, I know how to go. There's the 11Ts conference right now, but which I think Thomas, I think you're speaking at. I'm almost positive. I know a few people are, but anyway, we've got a whole bunch of 11T fans in the community, so it was a big day where we have like 5 speakers in the front end horse community that's talking at this thing. So it's just very exciting. But but yeah. So,
good luck, everyone.
Yeah. Just wanted to say, like, he did not leave because he was bored. He left because obligations. Phasmo asks, I wonder, Motion One looks awesome. What may be the differences to GSAP in terms of features?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an exercise of trying to, like, get as many of the same features for the minimum file size. That's kind of like my mindset about this. And same with Pop Motion and an anime. Like, I'm trying to see how much can we offer for as little file size as possible. So there is actually a page, again, on motion.dev. There's a feature comparison page that sort of talks through all the trade-offs. So given the smaller bundle size of Motion One, there is things that it doesn't support from GreenSock. Like, I mean, you know, GreenSock's pretty unmatchable in terms of its feature set.
Yeah.
But likewise, there are some things that, being based on WAAPI, that Motion One can support, that Anime and Pop Motion and GreenSock can't. So you can see that there's quite a lot of matching features, but there's definitely some like more advanced things. Especially the main one for me is like more of like a advanced sort of JavaScript animator person. Is it doesn't do raw JS output yet, which for me is like one of the cool things. But as I say, we've got that the transform polyfill, the numbers only polyfill. And for me, that's going to be the basis going forward of like maybe some API where we can start to offer more of these things that aren't WAAPI, but they're like WAAPI compatible. They're the Motion One API, just repackaged in a slightly different way.
Cool.
So
I'm not sure if Phasmo is here, but if that answers your questions, or if that link helps, just let us know. Cool. So, Phasmo is here. Hey, Phasmo. Yeah. So just hopefully that covers it. If you have any specific questions, we've got a GreenSock person and a Motion One person standing by to take your call to basically answer, yes, it's this or it's that. Anthony, yeah, already touched this question. Thomas asks again, what's your website, Matt? Do you have one?
No, I don't have one anymore. Matthew Perry was taken.
What?
But yeah, I know. I don't know who by. Some wannabe actor, I think.
He sounds like a hack. Honestly, he'll never make it.
So I only have motion.dev now. I used to have cool. I did have something, and there was some articles up there that I will potentially, but maybe I'll just carry on forgetting. But I keep meaning to port all of the articles from that to motion.dev. But for now, it is just that.
Awesome. Cool. And Creative Motion, Tom, great to see you. Welcome. Another great animator in the chat, and also friend of the show. So I wonder what compelled you to use camel case class names in the Motion website. I just want to know. Thomas has questions, man.
Oh, is he a regular
Thomas
splunker of
is a
source code?
I'm not sure, but Thomas is a good friend and has been on the show and everything. I don't know.
I suspect what you're seeing. Yeah, so that is essentially that's styled components. So what you're seeing there are the names of the components, and don't judge me for the names. Like it's not relevant, but that's just what I've called the components. And when it outputs the when it takes the components and puts them into class names, usually it will like minify them into this little thing. But I was having some weird problem with the latest version of Next, latest version of Style Components and their hydration. They had some hydration issues. And like if you bounce between from one page to another, the whole page would just go crazy. Like divs over here, divs over there. And I had some semantic tags too. And they all lost their styles. And so it was just a bit... it was just one of those things where you want to fix it as soon as quick because you're trying to do something completely not related or like this is not the interesting part of the job. So by turning off the what's the word?
Obfuscation?
Yeah, that's it.
It's another made up word.
Definitely. That was not, I mean, that was one of those words that they only ever wrote.
Yeah.
And then like one day someone had to cut it. So the first man came to...
Carl, we're going to have to say this. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a dark day for some bookkeeper, some linguist.
Annika,
welcome. And so that was that really. So it fixed it and I left it there. But it'd be nice to change it because, I mean, I don't know.
No worries.
It's a bigger topic about...
I think he was just kind of curious. I
think there's a lot to talk about like having code be readable for people that come along to your website. Like minified code, is it good for like to learn from and everything? But anyway, for now you get to see my appalling component naming schemes.
No worries, man. Mine are way worse. All good. Thomas also asks. Actually, we did just get a quick question from Chori. Welcome. First time here. Thanks for coming through. Chori asks, is motion.dev like Framer Motion? So we've touched on it a bit in that Matt is the creator of both of those. I'm not sure how long you've been here, but Matt created both. Framer Motion is only React and has like I would say, Matt, probably a much bigger feature set. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, and it will be probably always like a bigger feature set, I think. Yeah.
Got it. And then Motion 1 is mostly designed to abstract the web animations API and make it a lot easier to work with, and also kind of get as many features at a tiny bundle size. So I think it's if you absolutely need the smallest bundle size possible, Motion 1 would be a good way to go. If you need lots more features, if you need flip animations for like kind of animating the seemingly unanimatable, and bundle size is still important but not as crucial, and you're using React, Framer Motion seems like a better call. So
perfect.
Let us know if that answers your question, Chori Wevo, and welcome. Thanks for coming through. And Skakarvi, sorry, I'm screwing up saying your name, but good to see you. Welcome. Next question. I wonder, does Motion use the type? Let me scroll on this thing. Hold on one sec. I wonder, does Motion? Give me one sec. Where is that? Two people desktop. Sorry, I'm trying to get the thing so I can. Oh, that's why, because I'm on the wrong one. Turn off studio mode. Sorry, OBS is not the most user-friendly thing. Okay, here we go. I wonder, does Motion use the typed CSS OM for the -- motion custom properties?
Yeah, ish. So the CSSOM is like essentially types for CSS, not variables, like values, I guess.
Okay.
And so you could say, I think like the API is something like like px, and then a function call, and you could put a number in there. And it means that you could later set a style to that, and it will know that it's like, if you gave it 10, it's like 10 pixels. But also you can then access the value, the raw value, without having to like pass a string later on. So you don't have to do like, is this a string? Yes. Okay. Pass this into a float. But it doesn't
Got it.
have wide browser support, and we don't use it. We use a related API, which is the CSS properties and values API, which itself has like some types stuff to it, but it doesn't actually use the. I'm sure they came from the same, place, but it doesn't use these types
Got it.
functions. Like, yeah.
Cool. And Cassie, thank you for being here. Take care. She's leaving. I know you
Oh,
can't see chat right now, but yeah. Nixta, good to see you again. I wonder, can I change color interpolation for color-based animations?
no, and so this is probably what they're getting at is, so in frame of motion when we animate like colors, and actually now any colors, we do it in RGB space, but we do it in what's called linear. In fact, let me get this video. I'll put it in the chat because it's really
Cool.
so we do it in linear, what's called linear color space.
Okay.
And this is what that does, is allow you to essentially animate colors without going through like this muddy, what you get like a kind of a muddy interpolation.
We
So
were
if
seeing
you
that
promise,
earlier. Yeah.
yeah, but maybe Josh talked about it as well, like where you can create gradients that are like
Yes.
retain their brightness throughout this. So it's a similar thing. If you imagine like going through that gradient through time, you can imagine that the one like the nice gradient would maintain like a nice color throughout the animation. So even if it's just a swatch, a single color, and you
Right.
animate that color from one of that gradient, if you go through the nice gradient, those colors will always be nice. If you go through, it's what, if I got a humongous delay between my video and
You're good for me. It might
oh
just be
wow,
coming
it's
back to
like
you.
kind of chippy at this point. It's like watching myself 10 seconds in the past. But
Oh, good. I
if
can I can bring you back to here, so it's not as big and as
oh no
noticeable.
no
How's
no,
that?
it's
Okay.
cool, it's cool. Uh, I
What
just, so anyway,
advice would
yeah.
you give to past you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if only it went that way around, because
Yeah.
what I wanted, I want this video to be in the future, and that way I can
Right.
fix things. Um, oh, cool, no leg. Okay, brilliant. So,
Yeah, we're good.
yeah, so that link, I don't know if it comes up where it comes up, but
I will put it here.
oh,
Clear
so
color's broken. Yeah, I think check and see that. Yeah, minute physics. I've definitely seen minute physics before. I don't know if I've seen this one before. Let me drop it in chat. Let me snip it. There you go. Awesome. So this talks about it.
yeah, I'd really recommend like watching it. It's just kind of interesting, but it also
Awesome.
sort of explains the gist of this problem space. And yeah, so we are stuck with the browser's interpolation basically.
Got it.
And doing anything cleverer would be bringing in that file size again. And you're looking like probably like a kilobyte or two, I don't know. But when you're talking about 3 kilobyte library,
Yeah, it's
it's like,
to bring
yeah,
that. Yeah, totally agree.
yeah.
I totally hear you. But great question. I think that was from Nixta. Great question, Nixta, and great to see you again. Awesome. So yeah, that's all the questions that we've collected. Matt, thank you so much for being here, man. You make some really cool stuff. Frame of motion alone is just. I mean, I think chat was watching me just go through some of the demos. Just like that's it just feels great. Our friend Will Johnson is actually putting out a framer motion course
Oh
soon.
yeah, oh the Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh amazing! I'm looking
Will's,
forward to learning how to use frame of motion. To be honest, like I bet he comes up with some pretty cool stuff.
yeah. He's a good guy. So totally agree. I think he's gonna put out something pretty fantastic. But yeah, the framer motion alone is fantastic. And this was a blast getting to learn Motion One. Thank you so much for coming on
Oh,
to
it's
teach
amazing to
us.
come on.
This was
Yeah,
great.
no, it's great. I had a good way to spend your evening. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Love hearing that. Yeah, and chat. Thank you so much. If you're not following already, we are constantly doing fun. Let me actually bring up our site that shows these fun things I'm promising you. Next week, we had a couple great shows. We are learning Algolia with Heroin. I am sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I probably am. I haven't had a chance to ask you yet. But we're going to be learning Algolia. I'm very excited for that. There's so much that Algolia can do for you. We just add search powers to your site. It's going to be a great episode there. Then the next day, we are, I've got to talk to Mandy and get the component name, but basically, Mandy Michael, phenomenal creative developer, is coming on to build something out with us. I'm really excited about it. She is wonderful. That one's a little different. You might notice it's 8 a.m. My time, basically, Eastern Standard Time. That's because she's in Australia. So I'm waking up early. She's coming on late, and we're making it happen. It's worth it. She is fantastic. So definitely, if you can, tune in for that. If not, we'll catch the VOD after the fact. But I'll be there. And then our good friend Ryan Labar of Creative Seagulls Elegant Seagulls is coming on to teach us about page transitions on a Next.js site. He is so good at it, making let's say going from one page to another. You know what a page transition is. He's great at it. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. So we got 3 great shows next week. As I said, if you're not already following, please follow. I don't want you to miss out on that stuff. And we're always doing creative, fun web development. So this is the place to be if you're into that. And last but not least, you have a freaking great community in the Discord. So if you are a fun, kind, nice, good person, you're gonna fit right in. There are so many fantastic people. So join the Discord, because there's those people in there are just wonderful, and you're gonna love them. So thank you again, Matt. We're gonna raid somebody, so hang in there, chat, and let's go find someone to the same way that Bruno brought all his audience here. Matt, we're gonna go bring our audience and show them something cool too. So
cool. Get your axes.
Yeah, absolutely. Chat, take care, and we will see you on Tuesday. See you later.
See you later.